Good evening, Constant Reader, and welcome to our read-along episode where the Stephen King Book Club gathers together to discuss the opening chapters of The Dead Zone, the 1979 classic tale of destiny, premonition, and lost love. Tonight, I'll be asking some questions and sharing some opinions about the first 3 chapters. So, if you haven't opened up the book yet, you might want to come back to this video to avoid spoilers. And now, Constant Reader, it's time to enter the Dead Zone. First, let's discuss the audacity of naming the main character John Smith, the blandest name in the world. No offense to any John Smiths out there.
Excuse me, I'm John Smith.
John Smith, 1882.
My mistake.
It just sounds so common. And of course, that's what Stephen King seems to be going for. In many ways, John Smith is an everyman character. An average, everyday, easygoing character that many of us can relate to. There are a few things that make him unique. His sense of humor is a little twisted at times, such as when he jumps out at his girlfriend wearing a Jekyll and Hyde mask. And sometimes he can't stop making witty W.C. Field-type remarks.
I haven't played since playing in the Thousand Islands many years ago. I used to be in the dressing business up there.
But for the most part, he comes across as a sweet, sincere, honest guy. Much more Jimmy Stewart rather than Christopher Walken. John Smith is a young high school English teacher with a classroom filled with admiring students. He is dating a fellow teacher, a young woman named Sarah Bracknell. The opening chapters let us know that Sarah and John have not slept together yet. He is patiently waiting for her to fully recover from her previous boyfriend, a typical alpha male named Dan. John is patient in a lot of ways, probably because he believes that he has more time, a misconception most of us adopt. He believes that he and Sarah are at the beginning of a long, luxurious romance. He doesn't know what is about to happen at the end of chapter 2. And this is ironic because he can sometimes glimpse into the future, such as when he predicts the correct number on the spinning wheel. But he does not predict the car accident that will send him into a coma. Oh, another irony? He was hit by a Dodge. When John Smith wakes up years later, that's when his good-natured character will be put to the test. But we're not going past chapter 3 today, so let's shift from our story's hero and talk about Greg Stilson. We meet Greg Stilson in the prologue, and we don't see him again in the first 3 chapters. When we meet him, it's the 1950s. He is a young man in his early 20s selling Bibles door to door, going from one farmhouse to the next. Now, it's common for Stephen King villains to be connected with religion. Sometimes they are whacked-out zealots, like from The Mist and Carrie. But sometimes they use the veneer of religious devotion as a disguise, a wolf in sheep's clothing, so to speak. And it becomes clear that Greg Stilson fits into this category. You can learn a lot about a character by the way they react to an animal. When Jesse Pinkman from Breaking Bad is fascinated by a random beetle, it reveals his childlike sense of wonder that lurks underneath his bravado. In the pilot episode of the U.S. version of House of Cards, Francis Underwood discovers an injured dog, and he strangles it to death. He tells the audience that he is putting it out of its suffering, but we also sense that he takes pleasure in exerting power over others. So, how does Greg Stilson react when he meets a farm dog while the owners aren't home? First, he says, "Hello, Pooch," in a low and pleasant voice. The barking dog continues to advance, so Greg produces a flit gun filled with ammonia. He then sprays the dog in the face. Even though the dog is now retreating, Greg kicks the animal. The dog snaps back instinctively and tears the cuff of Greg Stilson's pants. And that's when the Bible salesman unleashes his insane rage. He kicks the dog and doesn't stop kicking until the poor creature is dying. That's Greg Stilson in the prologue. Age 22 in the year 1955, a psychotic young man who believes he is bound for greatness. As I said, we don't see this character again for a while, so if you've just read the first 3 chapters of the book, I would love to know your predictions as to how Greg Stilson will fit into this story. What role will he play in the Dead Zone? Let's talk a little more about the prologue, but we'll go back to the story's main character, John Smith. The book begins with our protagonist as a 6-year-old boy skating on the frozen runaround pond near Durham, Maine. Little Johnny Smith wants to skate backwards like the other boys, but when he does, there's an accident and he bangs his head against the ice, knocking himself unconscious. When he awakens, he tells one of the adults, "Don't jump it no more, Chuck." And a month later, that man Chuck tries to jumpstart his car battery and causes an explosion which claims one of his eyes. The narration lets us know that the injury on the ice has given little Johnny a special gift, or perhaps it has unlocked a power that had been lurking all along. Last month, I asked some of you constant readers to share your opinions about premonitions. Is John Smith's power purely fiction? Or do people have premonitions in real life? Here's what some of you said, and I'm going to use some computer-generated voices to bring your comments to life.
I regularly have both déjà vu and dreams about possible future scenarios in my life. I don't keep a dream journal or anything, so if I have actually had a real premonition, I have no idea, but I believe that it is possible and has happened throughout human history. Abraham Lincoln, for example, had regular premonitions of his own death by an assassin's bullet. I think premonitions are real to some extent. Unfortunately, there's not really any way to prove it, which is a huge theme in this book.
Never had premonitions. Don't believe in superstitions or the paranormal, but thus far this isn't impacting my enjoyment of the book one bit.
As you continue to read The Dead Zone, be on the lookout for symbols and motifs. The Halloween mask is one of them. There's a reason that its ghastly two-faced image haunts Sarah. Keep it in mind as the rest of the novel unfolds. And for those of you new to the works of Stephen King, take note of the number 19. It's the number that comes up on the wheel, the number Johnny successfully predicts at the fair. But you'll find that this number creeps up in other novels as well. And now that we've shared some thoughts on the opening chapters, let's open it up to the rest of the constant readers in our book club.
Leave a comment down below and tell us your first impressions of the book. And thanks for subscribing to the channel.
Thanks for watching and listening to the Stephen King Book Club. Our next Dead Zone video will be covering some of the events mentioned from chapters 4 through 8. So keep reading, constant reader, and we'll see you soon.